In this video, we're going to continue to improve our understanding of the economic climate by looking at the impact on businesses of changes in consumer income and changes in interest rates. But as a reminder, let's start by making sure that everyone understands what these terms actually mean. Consumer income means the amount of money that people earn, mainly from their wages, pensions, benefits, or income from investments. As consumer income increases, people have more money to spend on goods and services. This is known as consumer spending. The interest rate is the cost of either borrowing money or the amount of money a saver receives as interest as a reward for keeping their money in a particular savings account. Changes to either of these can have a major impact on businesses. In this video, we're going to meet our main example. This is Sven, who is the owner of Nordic Hot Tubs Limited, an online business selling hot tubs direct to consumers that they can install themselves in their gardens. Sven set up his business at a time when interest rates were very low and the economy was doing very well and consumer income was really high. He needed finance to set up his business, to buy equipment, pay for the premises, and purchase the initial stock required to get off the ground. He was pleased to find that he could borrow the money in the form of a startup loan from the bank, as it was a relatively low cost due to the low interest rate. Sven was fortunate to set his business up at a time when the economy was doing well, consumer incomes were high, and consumers were feeling better off and confident to spend money. Most people felt secure in their jobs and were unlikely to be made redundant. It was a great time for Nordic Hot Tubs as sales were high, profits were high, and Sven could employ a team of people to help fulfill demand. For Sven, as an entrepreneur, he has been impacted both positively and negatively by changes to consumer incomes and to interest. Let's look in more detail at how these changes might impact a business just like Nordic Hot Tubs. To all the teachers out there, show all of these videos without any ads and gain access to our growing library of over 500 teaching worksheets. Why not visit BizzWizard.co.uk to find out more? So firstly, with consumer income, if consumer incomes increase, this is often because the economy as a whole is performing well, and that's good news for consumers. If consumers receive more money, then they are more likely to feel better off and to be confident to spend more money buying goods and services from businesses. They might eat out more, buy more luxuries, or buy more expensive versions of products. And that's good news for businesses, as it will usually mean more sales and more profit for them. Businesses may then need to increase the amount of stock or inventory that they hold of their products, or they may need to employ more staff to meet the extra demand. Businesses may also be in a position to invest more money, perhaps by expanding their premises, upgrading their machinery, or bringing in new technology. And some businesses might switch their production to focus more on luxury goods. In fact, some of their cheaper, lower quality products may even see a fall in sales. If people are earning more money and the economy is doing well, some businesses whose main focus is on cheap and low quality items might actually see a fall in sales. Now, if consumer income actually decreases, this is typically because the economy as a whole is doing worse than before, and that's bad news for consumers. Consumers receive less money, so they are likely to spend less money on buying goods and services from businesses overall. They probably feel a lot less well off, and they might be worried about losing their own jobs. And this will usually mean lower sales and less profit for businesses. In fact, they may need to reduce the amount of stock that they hold or to employ fewer people due to the drop in demand. In these circumstances, businesses may also be likely to reduce their investment levels, so not expanding and not buying new technology. Now, don't forget though that some businesses may actually do better as a result of falling consumer incomes. These are usually businesses that sell cheaper or inferior versions of products or services. And this is because if consumers have less money, then they might spend a bigger chunk of their money at discount supermarkets or pound shops, where the focus is on low prices. Or they might get the bus instead of using a car or ordering an Uber. During the 2008 financial crisis, Lidl and Aldi actually did better than the other supermarkets because of their low prices. This makes sense. If people have less money, then they are going to try and spend, well, less. Bring this video and over 100 more to life with fun, interactive games, quizzes and case studies. Why not try the first 25 completely free by visiting BizzWizard.co.uk. Most businesses will have to change their strategy when consumer incomes fall, and this will have an impact on all areas of the business. On the production side, they will need to find ways of reducing costs and increasing productivity. They may also look at producing new, cheaper products to respond to the changes in demand, and may even find themselves discontinuing existing, more expensive products if demand ends up falling significantly. The HR department, well, they will need to look at ways of improving productivity to reduce costs, and they may have to cut recruitment or even make redundancies to try and reduce their wage bill. When incomes fall, the finance department might need to reduce costs by taking out cheaper loans, trying to reduce its overdraft, or looking at alternative ways of financing. Finally, the marketing team might have to completely change the marketing mix and look at the way that they currently advertise. They will also need to look at their pricing strategy and probably their promotional offers. So we've seen that there is a strong link between consumer income and consumer spending. Consumer spending can also be affected by levels of unemployment and job security. If people feel that their jobs are safe, then they are more likely to spend money. If there's an uncertainty in the economy, they may spend less money. We've seen the effect of this with both Brexit and the coronavirus pandemic. If house prices are increasing, then homeowners may feel more wealthy and confident about spending money. These are all examples of what's called consumer confidence. The more confident consumers are, the more they're likely to spend. Each of the video courses over at BizzWizard.co.uk also includes an interactive business case study that applies the knowledge learnt to a real-world scenario. There are over 1,000 multiple-choice questions, each with detailed feedback, which tests students' understanding of the content. Why not visit BizzWizard.co.uk to find out more? So, another factor that can have an impact on consumer confidence is changes to the interest rates. This can have a significant impact on a business just like Sven and Nordic Hot Tubs. Interest rates are set by the Bank of England, and they will affect the interest rates charged and offered by high street banks. Changes in the interest rate can have an impact on a business directly, if they have either a loan or savings, or it can affect them because of the impact of changes in the interest on consumer behaviour. Let's start with looking at the direct impact on businesses. If interest rates go up, it becomes more expensive for businesses to borrow money. This might mean that they delay making investments in their business because of the higher cost of borrowing money to fund that investment. If the business is a limited company, they may prefer to finance themselves by issuing equity or shares as it is less expensive than a loan. It could also put off some new businesses from initially setting up, as getting a business startup loan may be simply too expensive. Now, if interest rates go down, it becomes less expensive for businesses to borrow money. This can encourage businesses to invest more, increase their levels of production, meaning more jobs are created and people have higher incomes, which will, in turn, encourage more consumer spending, more sales and profits for the business. Low interest rates may also be an incentive for new business startups, as the cost of borrowing to fund their new business will be much lower. Now, let's look at the impact of interest rate changes on consumers. These are the people who buy goods and services from businesses just like me and you. So the way that the changes in the interest rate affects them will have a knock-on effect on the business. If interest rates go up, then consumers are encouraged to save bigger proportions of their income because they will earn more interest on it. The more money they save, the less they spend on goods and services, which is bad for business. Another impact of higher interest rates on consumers is that they are less likely to borrow money to fund their purchases. Again, this means there's less money available for consumers to spend, and businesses will see a fall in demand, especially for higher ticket or luxury purchases such as cars, hot tubs, and holidays. For people who already have mortgages, an increase in the interest rate usually means that their mortgage payments are higher, which means that they have less spending power. These impacts of higher interest rates mean that consumers are likely to spend less, which means lower demand for products and services that businesses sell, meaning lower sales and lower profits. This may lead even to job losses and redundancies having to be made by these businesses. Now, if interest rates go down, then consumers are encouraged to save a smaller proportion of their income because they will earn less interest. The less money they save, the more they spend on goods and services, which is good for business. Sven would be the first to admit that a hot tub is a luxury purchase, not an essential one. Fortunately, when he launched the company, interest rates were low, and this meant that people were less likely to save a big chunk of their wages and preferred instead to spend it on luxuries, like, hot tubs. All of these impacts of lower interest rates mean that consumers are likely to spend more money, which means increased demand for products and services that businesses sell, meaning higher sales and higher profits, and this might lead to jobs being created and higher levels of employment. So you can kind of see, interest rates go up, that's bad for business. Interest rates go down, that's probably going to be pretty good for business. So, Nordic Hot Tubs got off to a great start. It was the entrepreneur's dream. Sales were high, consumer spending was up, and hot tubs were flying off the shelf. As we have already discussed though, things often change. Consumer income may drop, leading to reduced consumer spending, and then things change. Sales might drop and the business can struggle. And this was sadly the fact for Sven. 5 years after he'd set up his business, the economy took a turn for the worst. Interest rates for borrowing were really high, unemployment increased massively, and consumer income fell dramatically. Sven had been planning to expand his business further by borrowing more money, but he's had to scrap his plan to invest in his business because it's just too expensive. He's also seen sales fall off. Lower demand for hot tubs means lower revenues and profits for Sven's business. He needs to make some tough decisions about how to move forward. First of all, he needs to look at his staff headcount. Sadly, he's going to have to make 2 of his staff redundant to save on his wage costs. He also needs to look at other ways his business can save costs. He's currently spending a lot of money on advertising. He decides to cut this and to focus on only advertising in publications read by more affluent customers that actually have the money to be able to buy themselves a hot tub. And Sven also even reduces the amount of inventory that he's holding. In other words, the number of hot tubs that he keeps in stock to sell to potential customers. This allowed him to free up some cash, which Sven could really do with making available. We've seen that Sven's business is much more likely to flourish when consumer incomes are high and when interest rates are low, as both of these encourage consumer spending, particularly on luxuries such as hot tubs that Sven sells. It's also easier for Sven to borrow money cheaply when interest rates are low, meaning he is more likely to invest into his business. If you get a question on the impact of changes in consumer income or changes in interest rates in your exam, it's important to remember that you should always relate this back to the impact on the businesses. Changes in both will have a direct impact on consumer behaviour, but it's the impact of this consumer behaviour on businesses that you need to highlight in your answers. It's also important to point out that the bigger the change in interest rates, or the bigger the change in consumer incomes, the bigger the impact this is going to have on a business. So until next time, this has been the BizzWizard. See you in the next video.